Elena moved quietly through the gleaming halls of the prestigious Vantage shooting range, her mop in hand and her gaze lowered. At 72, she was the building's janitor, a role she had held for nearly a decade. The polished floors reflected the sparkling chandeliers overhead, but no light seemed to touch her world. Around her, impeccably dressed competitors and their entourages buzzed with excitement and rivalry. She was a ghost in their midst, present yet unnoticed. Tonight was the range's most anticipated competition of the season, drawing the area's most feared marksmen, the elite shooters. Men and women who carried themselves with a mix of arrogance and confidence, accustomed to dominating both targets and conversations. Elena had seen many of them through the years, their sharp eyes barely registering her existence. To them, she was part of the backdrop, as invisible as the floor she diligently cleaned. As she emptied her mop bucket in the maintenance room, Elena overheard the laughter and teasing from across the hall. Among the group of shooters gathered near one of the firing lanes stood Alan Mercer, a brash 35-year-old with a reputation for cruelty disguised as humor. His gaze landed on her, and a smirk played on his lips. "Hey, Elena," Alan called out, loud enough for the others to hear, "why don't you take a shot for us? Might be a good laugh." His voice dripped with mockery, as if asking a janitor to shoot was the most ridiculous idea in the world. The room's chatter quieted, eyes turning toward Elena. She froze for a moment, unsure whether to respond, heart beating faster under the weight of their stares. The first test had begun. Elena's fingers clenched tightly around the mop handle as Alan Mercer's challenge echoed through the room. The sharp, polished shooting range seemed to shrink in an instant, every eye locking onto her, the silent janitor suddenly thrust into the spotlight. The laughter from Alan and his companions cut through the air like bullets, sharp and unrelenting. "Come on, Elena. Don't keep us waiting. Let's see if you can even hold the gun right." The group of elite shooters, dressed in tailored blazers and sporting custom leather gloves, chuckled amongst themselves. Their amusement wasn't kind, it was the cruel kind that made Elena's cheeks burn hot with a mix of embarrassment and anger. Yet, beneath their mocking eyes and snide remarks, she felt an unyielding resolve begin to form. One competitor, a wiry man named Derek, leaned forward, smirking. "You sure you're not going to shoot your foot off? Or worse, make us all skip this boring competition because you embarrass us with, what's the word? Cluelessness?" A ripple of laughter passed through the crowd. A few onlookers shook their heads slightly, lips pressed into thin lines, perhaps uncomfortable with the spectacle but unwilling to intervene. The social etiquette advantage was ruthless, it prized strength and mastery over the sport, leaving little room for outsiders. Elena swallowed hard. The pistol now rested on the shooting bench in front of her, a cold, heavy slab of metal she'd never expected to touch again. She could feel the sweat rising on her forehead despite the crisp air conditioning. I don't think this is a good idea," she whispered, the voice barely carrying. Alan scoffed, stepping forward, his gaze locking onto hers with an imperious glint. "Don't be shy. After all, we're all friends here. Just have a little fun. Or are you scared? It's okay if you are." The words were deliberate, designed to cut her down to size in front of the other shooters and the crowd gathered along the back rows. Some younger men nodded, exchanging sly glances, their amusement almost palpable. Elena could feel the weight of all those eyes sinking into her skin, probing for weakness, ready to pounce at the first sign of it. Her throat tightened, but deep within, memories stirred, a lifetime, actually, of days when she had stood not as a janitor, but as a competitor in her youth, wielding a pistol with steady hands and a fierce spirit. Those days felt far off now, buried under years of quiet labor and the choices life had demanded. One of the women's shooters, a tall, angular figure named Marissa, crossed her arms. Her tone was icy as she added, "We don't usually let just anyone pick up a gun here. But seeing as Alan wants a joke, let's indulge him." The room around them echoed with laughter once more. Elena felt the moment close in again, but something inside her solidified, that small voice she had often tried to ignore. She reached out slowly, the moment drawing close with agonizing slowness as she stepped forward to the firing lane. A murmur ran through the crowd. A few faces softened. A man in the corner adjusted his glasses and nodded the faintest encouragement, though no one spoke aloud. She was alone in a sea of skeptics. Elena lifted the pistol with trembling hands, its smooth surface cool against her fingers. The grip felt familiar despite the years, familiar enough to remember the balance, the weight, the subtle pressure that should guide the barrel's aim. Alan swaggered closer to her side, whispering loudly enough for others to hear, "Try not to embarrass yourself too badly, old girl. We'd hate to clean up that mess." Despite the insult, Elena's face remained composed. She took a deep breath, steadying her racing heart. The room seemed to hold its breath with her, waiting for disaster. The first shot rang out, sharp and echoing against the polished walls. The tiny lead bullet smashed into the bullseye with an unexpected precision that entered the air and silenced the snickering immediately. Gasps rippled through the gathering, a few heads jerked in disbelief, eyes wide. Even Marissa's cold demeanor flickered for a moment. "You," Alan started, the words choking in his throat. Elena ignored him, focusing on the target for her next shot. She raised the pistol again, breath even, muscles steady despite the adrenaline. Each shot followed, the crunch of bullets hitting the center, one after another, each more assured than the last. The crowd fell into a hush so complete it felt oppressive. No more whispers, no derisive laughter. Only stark silence filled the chamber. After 5 shots, all clustered tightly on the bullseye, Elena lowered the pistol and allowed herself a moment to breathe. Some members of the crowd exchanged incredulous glances. Derek bit his lip, his earlier grin gone, replaced with a sour expression. How did? Alan's smirk had vanished, replaced by a scowl. He strode back, rubbing his temple as if the reality stung too much. No way, he muttered under his breath. A few younger shooters nodded to one another, their laughter replaced by reluctant admiration. A low murmur of respect ran through the room, undercutting the earlier bravado. A man from the audience whispered, "She's got to be someone important. You don't learn to shoot like that by accident." Elena's eyes scanned the faces that now regarded her not with mockery, but with something closer to awe and respect. For the first time in many years, she felt visible, truly seen, not as a janitor, but as a woman with skill and strength. Alan cleared his throat, attempting to salvage his dignity. "Well, I suppose I was wrong," he said, voice tight. "You've got something after all." But his words felt hollow, ringing empty in the space now filled with silent approval for Elena. The crowd's energy had shifted irrevocably. As the event wrapped and spectators began to disperse, Elena retrieved her mop in quiet dignity. Walking back through the gleaming hall, she faced fewer sneers and more nods of acknowledgement. Her fingers brushed the worn leather strap of her old watch, an unassuming reminder of days when her future had seemed full of possibility. Tonight had reawakened something long dormant. Yet, beneath this victory lurked a complex tangle of feelings: humiliation turned to triumph, doubt challenged by strength, invisibility pierced by attention. Elena knew the journey was far from over. But for now, she had the crowd's silence as proof. They had underestimated her at their own peril. The room around Elena seemed to hold its breath as she stepped up to the line for her second round of shots. Whispers flowed through the crowd like a rising tide: disbelief, admiration, curiosity. The elite shooters who had moments ago mocked her were now watching with wary eyes, their earlier confidence replaced by quiet doubt. Elena's hands, though aged, were steady. She took a slow breath, feeling the solid weight of the pistol in her palms. Her years as a competitive shooter emerged from the shadows of memory, each muscle remembering the discipline, the focus, the precision required to command the weapon. She was no stranger to this ritual. even if it had been decades since the last time she stood here with anything but a mop. Alan Mercer glanced at the target warily. His usual smirk was gone, replaced by an expression scraping the edges of disbelief and frustration. "Well, okay then," he muttered to himself, "let's see what you've really got." The loading of the pistol came naturally to Elena, each action measured and sure. The crowd fell into near silence, the weight of expectation palpable. She raised the gun, aligning the sights with the center of the target. A soft squeeze, and the trigger clicked. The bullet struck dead center. Shot after shot followed, each one landing cleanly, a cluster of bullseyes forming as if time slowed for her to exhibit a hidden mastery. The onlookers exchanged stunned glances, their laughter replaced by stunned silence and growing respect. Marissa, the tall woman with the cold demeanor, swallowed hard. A hint of admiration softened her eyes. "I've seen younger shooters struggle to hit half these," she whispered to a nearby teammate. Derek's jaw tightened, lips pressed into a thin line as he tried to mask his embarrassment. The smug aura the group had worn like armor was evaporating in the crisp air of the range. Elena's heart beat steadily, not with fear this time, but with quiet satisfaction. With each precise shot, years of doubt and invisibility lifted. Her skills weren't just alive, they were formidable. The crowd's whispers grew into murmurs of stunned approval. "Who knew? Look at that. She's incredible." Alan shifted uncomfortably, the weight of his earlier mockery pressing down. He took a step back, folding his arms, the faintest trace of respect glimmering in his eyes, though reluctant to admit it aloud. When Elena finished, she lowered the pistol, her expression composed but proud. The silence in the room was deeper than before, no applause, no cheers, just a collective breath exhaled in awe. Suddenly, a soft voice broke the quiet. A young man from the audience stood and clapped slowly, his hands echoing in the hush. Others joined hesitantly, the applause growing, a slow yet undeniable wave of recognition washing over the room. Elena's eyes searched the crowd. Behind the veil of surprise, she saw something unexpected, understanding. For once, her presence was not an afterthought, but a focal point. Alan approached her, clearing his throat awkwardly. "I suppose I owe you an apology, Elena. I was wrong to doubt you." His words, though strained, bore sincerity. Elena nodded, accepting them without bitterness. "Thank you," she said simply, the weight of the moment settling upon her. As the murmurs of admiration continued, Elena noticed others whispering about her rapid-fire accuracy, her calm demeanor under pressure, and her surprising return to form. The very same crowd that had dismissed her moments ago now spoke in hushed tones of their underestimated competitor. Marissa came forward, extending a hand. "I didn't expect that. You're remarkable." Elena accepted the gesture, holding the woman's gaze. "Thank you." The gathering dispersed slowly, many approaching Elena to express their newfound respect. For some, it was a lesson in humility, for others, a reminder never to underestimate hidden depths. Behind the scenes, murmurs spread about Elena's past. Questions began to surface. Who was she, really? Later, away from the crowd's eyes, Elena confided in an older man who managed the range, Mr. Whitman. "I used to compete professionally," she explained quietly. "I left the circuit to care for my family. The janitor's role is honest work, but shooting was part of who I was." Mr. Whitman nodded thoughtfully. "You surprised a lot of people tonight. This place isn't known for welcoming surprises, but maybe it should be." Elena allowed herself a small smile. Maybe it is time for the next chapter. She thought about the years she had stepped away from the firing line, the sacrifices made, the quiet identity beneath a humble exterior. The audience and shooters would remember this night differently now, not for the laughter, but for the silence that followed Elena's shots. A silence filled with respect and discovery. And as she looked out at the targets again, the doubt that once shadowed her presence began to dissolve, replaced by the clarity of her reclaimed strength. The story was no longer just about a janitor being mocked, it was about a woman reminding everyone of the fierce spirit that quietly endures beneath any exterior. Elena's triumphant return was a quiet victory, a pulse of authenticity in a world that too often measured value by surface appearances. As the night drew to a close, the question lingered, what would the shooters do next, now that they had seen who Elena truly was? Elena sat quietly in the dim break room of the shooting range after the crowd had thinned and the final echoes of applause had faded into memory. The weight of the evening pressed gently but firmly upon her chest, a mixture of relief, pride, and a strange tenderness. The mop she'd left propped against the wall now seemed less like a symbol of invisibility and more like a step on a path reclaimed. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. It was Mr. Whitman, the range manager. "Elena, may I join you for a moment?" She nodded, motioning to the solitary chair across from her. He settled in, his expression uncharacteristically warm for a man so firmly entrenched in the elitist world of competitive shooting. "You surprised everyone tonight," he began, folding his hands on his lap. "More than just with your skill, but with what you represent. There's a story here, isn't there?" Elena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "I suppose there is," she said softly. Her voice carried the subtle timbre of years filled with both joy and hardship. "I'm not just the janitor here." Mr. Whitman's eyes invited her to continue. "I was a competitive shooter long before I worked these halls. In my younger years, I traveled extensively, across the country, competing in tournaments. It was more than a sport to me, it was freedom, challenge, a voice." She smiled faintly, eyes glinting with distant memories. "Back then, I wore tailored shooting jackets, not janitor's overalls. I won accolades no one here knows about. But life, it has a way of changing your direction. Family needs, time away." Elena nodded. "My husband fell ill. I had 2 children to care for. The years I spent at home felt necessary but bittersweet. I wanted to shoot, to compete. But the world kept moving without me." Mr. Whitman leaned forward, clearly listening with genuine respect. "And when you came here as janitor?" "It was humility, yes. At first." She paused, brushing a stray gray hair behind her ear. "But I also found dignity in it. Work that mattered. Plus, it allowed me to stay connected to this place, even if on the edges." Her eyes traced the familiar contours of the shooting targets on the wall opposite them, the targets that had witnessed her silent persistence. The evening's events, the challenge from Alan Mercer and the others, it was like the ghosts of my past came alive. It felt as if this moment was waiting, tucked away, ready to surface. Mr. Whitman smiled. "You've reminded a lot of people here that appearances can deceive. Not everyone's story unfolds as the crowd assumes." "Exactly. That's what I wanted to show." Elena's voice gained quiet strength. "I didn't want to embarrass anyone, I just wanted them to see me. Not some invisible worker, but a person with history, skill, and worth." He nodded thoughtfully. "You've certainly done that. And you've made me rethink some things, about the culture here." The manager's words opened a door Elena hadn't dared to expect. A glimpse of possibility, a crack in the armor of elitism. Later that evening, as she prepared to leave, Elena pulled on her simple coat, visibly worn but clean. She slipped the pistol from her locker, the leather grip worn into smoothness by use. Holding it felt like holding a bridge between her past and present, the janitor and the competitor. As she stepped out into the cool night, the city's familiar hum surrounded her, distant yet comforting. This was a woman shaped not just by shooting competitions, but by life's quiet battles and unexpected detours. Though she dressed simply, her spirit bore the quiet elegance of someone who had seen the heights and depths life offers and had chosen resilience. She walked calmly toward the subway station, her footsteps steady, her presence unmistakable despite the modest garb. Inside her, the embers of confidence burned brighter, a reminder that talent and dignity don't always announce themselves loudly, but when discovered, demand reverence. In the deep recesses of the shooting range, the elite shooters were left to reckon with their earlier judgments, now burdened with the knowledge that what lay behind Elena's modest appearance was a legacy of excellence, perseverance, and unyielding grace. And as the night deepened, a subtle shift unfolded among the range's patrons. The walls that once echoed with condescension began to reverberate with a newfound respect for the unexpected, a recognition that strength can wear many faces. Elena's story was no longer that of an invisible janitor mocked for a momentary amusement. It had become a quiet anthem for those who carry hidden talents, who face life's upheavals and yet emerge with their fire intact. The next chapter wasn't written yet, it waited in the warmth of anticipation, in the hearts of those willing to look beyond first impressions and embrace the richness beneath. For Elena, the path forward held both promises and challenges, but in the silence following her shots, there was clarity, a firm understanding of who she was and what she could claim with quiet dignity. Her journey was proof that sometimes, the greatest victories are whispered, not shouted. In the days following Elena's unexpected display of skill, the atmosphere at Vantage shooting range shifted noticeably. The elite shooters, once unchallenged in their dominance, found themselves under the scrutinizing gaze of both management and their peers. The ripple effect of Elena's performance stretched far beyond the firing line, reaching the very heart of the shooting community entrenched in that polished building. Alan Mercer's usual swagger was diminished. His teasing remarks now carried a sharper edge, not aimed at Elena, but laced with bitterness aimed at himself. During a tense meeting with Mr. Whitman, the range manager, Alan found his prior arrogance being met with a firm rebuke. "You crossed a line, Alan," Mr. Whitman said sternly. "Your behavior towards Elena was humiliating and unprofessional. This range prides itself on fostering a respectful environment, and your conduct violated that standard." Alan struggled to find words, his defenses crumbling. "I was only joking around," he tried, but the manager shook his head. "Jokes at the expense of others aren't tolerated here anymore. We're placing you on suspension pending review. We need to send a message that such elitism and disrespect won't be accepted." The news spread like wildfire. For many, especially the younger shooters, it was a watershed moment. Conversations once dominated by bravado now contained cautious reflections on humility and respect. Some of Alan's closest allies quietly distanced themselves, recognizing that the climate surrounding Vantage was evolving. Marissa, who had approached Elena with a tentative hand of respect after the competition, became an unlikely advocate for change within the elite group. She spoke candidly in private forums about the need to broaden perspectives and challenge ingrained prejudices. "Elena showed us all something important," she commented in one meeting, "that skill and character come from unexpected places, and it's time we acknowledge that." Meanwhile, Elena received messages from several attendees and shooters alike, some simply expressing admiration, others confessing regret at having judged her prematurely. The kindness, though touching, contrasted with the hard-won resolve she had shown. One afternoon, Mr. Whitman approached her with an official letter in hand. "This is from the range's board, recognition for your talent and integrity. They'd like you to participate officially in upcoming events and even consider coaching opportunities." Elena's eyes shimmered with a mix of surprise and humble gratitude. "I didn't expect this." Neither did they, not at first. "But it's clear the range needs voices like yours, people who remind us what the sport is truly about." Her world had shifted once again, from janitor to competitor to mentor, a path neither she nor those around her could have predicted just days earlier. The following weekend, Elena returned to the firing line, this time not as a dare, but as an official participant in a friendly tournament hosted by the range. The waiting crowd greeted her with genuine applause, and she felt a deep sense of belonging. Alan was absent, serving his suspension, and whispers suggested he was grappling with both the consequences of his actions and a newfound respect for the woman he once mocked. Elena's shots were precise, measured, and confident. The clatter of bullets striking targets was accompanied by a swell of appreciation from both spectators and competitors. When the scores were tallied, she had earned respect not just for her accuracy but for the poise and grace she exhibited throughout. Later, as she collected her modest award, a young shooter approached and said quietly, "Thank you. You've changed how I see this sport, and everyone in it." Elena smiled warmly. "Thank you for saying that. I hope we all keep learning." As dusk settled, she left the hall under soft lighting that seemed less harsh, more warm. Elena felt the quiet vindication of a woman who had overcome assumptions, prejudice, and years of invisibility. Her journey had proved that dignity and worth are never bound by the uniform one wears or the role one plays in the eyes of society. Before leaving the range, she paused and looked back briefly. The once cold, elitist walls now felt like a place where barriers could be broken and narratives rewritten. In this new chapter, Elena stood not only as a champion of the targets but as a symbol of resilience and respect. Her story invites all of us to consider, when faced with moments of doubt, ridicule, or invisibility, would we find the strength to rise with quiet dignity? Would we reveal the depths beneath the surface others judge? What would you have done, in Elena's place? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring tales from unexpected heroes. See you in our next story.